So yes. Yeah, and with this, I would just mute myself. I mean, feel free, and we will do it more. Maybe one note, we will do it more interactively. So if you don't mind, if you have questions in between, then we will just ask them. Is that okay?
Sure. Yeah, sure.
Cool. Thanks a lot.
Okay, so I start. Yeah, so this presentation is regarding the player evaluation using uncertainty about reinforcement learning. Yeah, this is some joint work between University of Waterloo, Simon Fraser University, and Wachter Institute. So yeah, when we talk about player evaluation, what do we really want to solve is we want to evaluate the contribution of players in the game. It's very important, especially for team managers to for drafting and coaching and trading players. And usually we assume we can access to a data set, and this data set can be some game recordings. And the mainstream method currently is we instead quantify the player's action impact such that it can be used as some quantification to evaluate the performance of a player. For example, there is some existing work which use supervised learning to learn this action impact. And how they do is we can give a label of 1 to scoring a goal in our data set. And then we use any other maybe neural network to predict the scoring probability of other actions. And when it comes to reinforcement learning, it's a very good thing because we naturally have action value function in reinforcement learning, which is named Q value. And yeah, with the help of this action value function is actually give us the action impact. So we can directly use a Q value for us to evaluate players' actions. And in this case, we may design a reward function, which would be, we give reward of 1 to scoring a goal and 0 otherwise, and then run reinforcement learning to the action value. So this reward is pretty sparse, but we may later on see in our experiments is actually can give us some good ranking results. And here we still got some challenges because we see no matter the supervised learning or traditional reinforcement learning algorithm, they are both expectation-based method, which means they only learn the expected value of the action impact. And so their method cannot differentiate the risk-seeking actions from the risk-averse actions. And how to distinguish these actions and assign proper credits, it remains a challenge in the existing sports analytic methods. And in here, our proposed method is we use a uncertainty aware reinforcement learning to learn a risk-sensitive player evaluation matrix, and then do a post-hoc calibration. Here I give a motivating
Can I ask you a stupid question?
Yeah.
So, I mean, just to clarify that I understand it. So when you basically do, so the goal is basically to have some risk-averse reinforcement learning, right? So you want to learn some calibrated distribution over the credits that are assigned to each player, right?
Yes.
Okay, so just to put it in my own words,
to learn the action value distribution.
Yeah. And the reinforcement learn, so the agent that you learn, it's learning the actual. Is it learning on the on some actions that were done in the game, or how does the reinforcement learning agent learn?
Yeah. So basically there are two problem settings.
Yeah.
First is we do control. Like we wanted to learn a good policy for the agent.
Yeah.
The other direction is we only do policy evaluation. Like in our case, because we have a data set, we know what the players already done in the game. So in our case, it's basically policy evaluation.
Okay, so you have a lot of policies, which is each player how he or she is acting in the game.
Yeah,
and you want to
evaluate
like some calibrated metric for evaluating these.
Yeah, we want to evaluate how good the action of players they have done in the game.
Okay, cool. Thanks.
Maybe I have also a naive question. So could you give an example of the games that you use? Because I
have a section like later on in the experiments part.
Okay, so because I was just thinking that if there are multiple players, it could be that one is not likely to score any goals, while some others are likely to score goals.
Yeah, briefly speaking, in our data set, the game recording is the record the player's information who controls the park or controls the board. What location the player is in, and the player's ID, what action this player have done, and maybe including some other spatial or temporal features. That's the data set looks like.
Okay, makes sense. Yeah, thanks.
Thanks for the question. Okay, so here is a motivating example. So the picture at the bottom on the left-hand side is the playground of ice hockey. And here we actually extract 4 locations from our data set, which is marked as ABCD circle on the picture. And in all of these 4 locations, the player actually they take the shot action. So they shot the puck to the goal. And the picture on the right-hand side is actually shows the value distribution we have learned using our algorithm for these 4 actions. And we make sure that we choose these 4 actions and they have the roughly same expected value. So all the expected value of these 4 actions is roughly around 0.6. But we can see from the value distribution, they actually have very different like distributions. And then if we plot the inverse CDF function from this value distribution, we could see that the short action take at location A is risk averse than the short action take at location B. Why I say that? Because if we check the 0.8 level quantile value, so it's relatively smaller than the 0.8 level quantile value the player take at location B. And we also find that like there are some events that players they take action short at location D. So this is a very rare event in our data set, and it's very unlikely because it's very far from the goal. It's unlikely that the agent may take a very high risk to take a shot at this location. So it means when we do player evaluation, we should also kind of avoid this action counting when we do player evaluation, because it's kind of out of distribution data. So based on this motivating example, we would see there are actually 2 sources of uncertainty in reinforcement learning. The first is called the aleatoric uncertainty, which basically means the intrinsic uncertainty of the environment. And we know the sports game is a very highly stochastic environment, so it definitely will contain aleatoric uncertainty. And there is also epistemic uncertainty, which is shown like the events the player take shots at location D, which is very far from the goal. And this uncertainty is due to the lack of knowledge. For example, we only have very limited data samples. And in our case, because we only have a data set, so we also need to consider the epistemic uncertainty when we do player evaluation. Yeah, basically it means we need to capture both of the uncertainties. Okay, so first of all, the aleatoric uncertainty in reinforcement learning, we turn to the method called the distributional reinforcement learning. So it's a very nice algorithm which proposed maybe just several years ago. And so it helped us to learn the real value distribution for actions in reinforcement learning. So so when the environment is highly stochastic, we see that it naturally leads to the value distribution of the return for the agent. For example, like even though like in this picture, even though the agent start at the same initial state, because due to the stochastic transition dynamics, then eventually the agent may lead to different endpoints. So it will naturally give us 3 different returns. So these returns naturally form a value distribution. But in traditional reinforcement learning algorithm, because they only learn the Q value, which is the expected value, so it cannot capture the intrinsic uncertainty of the environment. So there is another algorithm called distributional reinforcement learning. It aims to learn the full value distribution for each state action pair. And they achieve this goal by using the Bellman operator called the distributional Bellman operator. So in this distributional Bellman operator, we actually treat all the element as random variables. And this equal means we want to match the distribution of the 2 hand side. So when we do use deep learning, we need to actually minimize the difference between the 2 value distribution of the current distribution and its target distribution. Yeah, so here I want to give more details for this distributional reinforcement learning if you are interested. So one problem when we use the distributional reinforcement learning is not really converge, because we work on distributions. It's no longer just a scalar value. So it's a very nice properties, and it's also already approved by some existing papers. And this distributional Bellman operator is a contraction mapping under the P-Y-system distance. So the Y-system distance is defined in this equation. And the picture in the middle actually shows an example for the Y-system distance when P equals 1. So it's the difference between the 2 inverse EDF function, and we take their absolute value and then do integral. So based on this Y-system matrix, there are actually a lot of methods they proposed to use quantile regression to approximately minimize this Y-system distance when they update their distribution parameters. So it means we can use some step function, which is a mixture of indirect directs to represent this inverse EDF. Yeah. Then it comes to our system flow to capture this aleatoric uncertainty. So first we learn we try to learn the full value distribution for each state action pair which the players have taken in our data set. And this value distribution, we follow previous work, which is represented as a mixture of directs. And then we use a quantile regression to update this value distribution. So in our data set, because it's actually the team sports, so we have home team and away team. So here we treat the home team and away team as two agents in our game, and we learn the value distribution for these two agents separately.
So what's the distribution that you use here to parameterize this? Is it a mixture of delta peaks?
Yeah. It's actually represented by a step function.
Ah, okay, I see.
So it's by the way, it's also.
So this is the CDF, right?
Inverse CDF. Yeah, CDF.
Okay, so so what you do is you parameterize the CDF with a mixture of delta distributions.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's also like it's also possible if we directly learn a continuous function, which we have published the work to achieve this. Yeah.
Ah, okay, I see. So yeah, because I haven't seen this, like, so this mixture of CDFs, what's the corresponding the mixture of delta functions as CDF? What's the corresponding PDF? It would be the it would be a mixture of delta. It's a mix. So the PDF is a mixture of delta functions, and the CDF is a mixture of delta step functions. Maybe I'm confused.
Yeah,
okay.
like your step function would be a easy and simple way.
Yeah.
We can also use some technique to learn a continuous function for us.
I see.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Thanks.
Yeah, so from the motivating example, we know that we also need to quantify the epistemic uncertainty because we only have access to a data set. So one thing we need to highlight here is, even though we, like to the previous step, we use distributional reinforcement learning to learn the value distribution of state action, but it still contains epistemic uncertainty. And it's a natural thing in both online learning and offline learning. In online learning, because the goal of the agent is to interact with the environment and then learn a good policy. So if the exploration is insufficient, so then the value distribution would contain a high epistemic uncertainty. And in offline setting, like in our case, we only have a data set, and we don't know if the data set is sufficient. So the uncertainty, the epistemic uncertainty is due to the insufficient data samples. And for the epistemic uncertainty estimation, a common solution is we can use density estimation to distinguish the in distribution and out of distribution data points. And so here one common reason the neural network may fail to capture the in-D data and OOD data is the feature collapse. So it has been pointed out by some existing papers, which means the neural network may map the in-D and the OOD data to the same feature space. Then the neural network can actually not distinguish these two kind of data points. So one solution is we can make the feature extractor to be distance aware. So the intuition here is if X is close to Y, then we may want the fx also close to fy. And here we may set a bi-lift stage condition for this feature extract. So we set an upper bound and a lower bound for the norm of the norm of the function f, and this upper bound can ensure the smoothness of the feature extractor, and the lower bound ensure the sensitivity of the feature extractor to distance. And to implement this bi-lift stage condition it's very easy, and it has been proved in some papers. And if we use a residual network with spectral norm, then it actually satisfies this bi-lift stage condition. Yeah, so with this feature extractor, then the next step is we use some density estimator for us to quantify the probability of the data points. So here we use some normalized flow models to achieve this goal.
Yeah. So then the density of this normalizing flow is a proxy for your uncertainty, right?
Yes.
Okay.
I have also another question. So since you try to avoid feature collapse, did you visualize or have some understanding of what kind of feature collapsed in the case of these games that you looked at?
Oh yeah, that's a good question. We don't do this visualization in this work.
Okay.
Oh, but because, yeah, but I think it's a good point.
Did you play with the strength of the by Lipschitz constraint then? Because I guess like if feature collapse is a huge issue, then you need to regularize a lot, and vice versa.
Sorry, what's your question?
So you have like this by Lipschitz constraint, like you have this constant C, right? This is the constant that you impose on this with the residual network plus spectral norm regularization. Like, did you play with this parameter a bit? Or
yeah. We we have two parameters here. It's empirically set.
Yeah. But is there do you have strong degradation of the performance if you make it too restricted? Or I think so, right? I mean, in my experience, it just at some point it just goes berserk.
Yeah, you're right.
Okay.
Yeah, I think here we just empirically choose these two hyperparameters.
Okay, thanks.
Yes. Well, with all these techniques we have done, then it's ready for us to define a risk-sensitive player evaluation metric. So we first see how the basic player evaluation metric they have defined in previous work. So one is called the goal impact metric. So what they define is we do a summation over state and action, like how many times the player L takes action A and state S in our data set, and then they use this counting as the weight and then times the action impact. And this action impact could be the difference between two consecutive Q values if their model is learned by reinforcement learning. And similarly, here we can define a risk-sensitive player evaluation metric. So the definition is pretty similar. The only difference is we can replace the action impact to be a risk-sensitive term. So here we give a confidence level C, and then our risk-sensitive action impact is defined as the y minus c level quantile value difference between two consecutive actions. But here we also need to do a density check. Like if this data sample is have a higher density, then we think its epistemic uncertainty is small, then we keep this data sample. If this density is very low, then we think it's some out of distribution data. Then we want to avoid these data samples. Then we don't use those samples in our player evaluation metric.
I have a stupid question. So here n of SAL, right?
Yeah.
I guess if S is like just some continuous space, similarly to the example that you had in the beginning, it's mostly
yeah.
most
It's
of the
in our work we actually we discretize the feature space here.
Okay.
When we do yeah.
So it could happen sometimes that n is not equal to 1 actually. This is okay. Makes sense. Thanks.
Yeah. Yeah, and here we give a very quick case study to use our risk-sensitive player evaluation metric in NHL dataset. It's the National Hockey League. I think ice hockey is a very popular sport in Canada. So here we report two tables here. So first table is we set the confidence level to 0.2. Then it corresponds to the 0.8 level quantile. So it's a higher level quantile. Then this table should be more risk-seeking because we use a higher action value. And the second table is we set confidence level to be 0.8. Then it corresponds to a lower level quantile value. Then this player ranking should be more risk-averse. And we could see when we use lower level quantile to rank players, then the defense man begins to appear in the player ranking. And usually the defense man do not take usually defense man is the goal of defense man is to do some defensive actions, so it's more risk averse. So it's so I think that it's reasonable that when we use lower level quantile to rank players, we get more defense man appears in our ranking.
I have one question. So here, I don't know the name of these players, of these ice hockey players, but are the top players here like really great players also in the field, or in other words, does the ranking make sense with the
that's a good question. So next we wanted to show whether our ranking is a reasonable ranking. First we give some overview of the data set. So actually in our work we have done experiments for both ice hockey and soccer. So it's a very large data set. It contains over 9 million events. It's over 4,000 games and over 6,000 players. And one typical events, it contains the information of players who control the puck or control the ball. So it indicates which player take this action, and also some other features. So here is the features in ice hockey game. You see it may contain the XY coordinates of the action, velocity, and the angle between the puck and the goal, and some temporal features, and also some in-game features like score difference, manpower difference, and whether it's home team or away team. And for the soccer game, it's some similar features here. Yeah, okay. So we train our model on this data set, and we want to see, it's a good question whether this player ranking is a reasonable ranking. So how we do that? we compute the correlation of our player ranking with some standard measures, which is free online. Actually, we can find from the NHL website or some soccer league website. So these standard measures may contain the how many game-winning goals the player has achieved in the season, and some overtime goal, short-handed goal, power play goal, and point, short-handed point, all these statistics. Yeah, because for example, the NHL websites, they use these statistics to actually rank players. So then we want to see if our player ranking also have a very high correlation with these standard measures. So our method is like listed under the bottom of the table. So because our method is risk sensitive, we need to set the confidence level C for our algorithm. So, but our compare method is actually just expected method. So first we set the confidence level to be 0.5. And later on we may find some optimal confidence level for these two games. So we can see when we choose the confidence level to be 0.5, our algorithm actually have already achieved a pretty high correlation with these success measures compared with other baselines. And if we just fine-tuning these confidence levels, then we can even achieve a higher correlation.
Sorry, just to to understand this correlation a bit further. So your metric gives kind of an increase in value. Is that discrete, I guess, or not? And then here you try to correlate it. For example, if an assist leads to a point.
Oh, yeah. So
like, how does this correlation work?
Yeah. So you see here, the impact is actually some scalar value. Right. This actually impact is a scalar, and this is just how many times the player takes this action at this state. So it means yeah, you can see this table. Yeah, so it means finally we may compute some scalar values for each players. Yeah, and then it's and then it means we compute the correlation between this column and the value we compute for each player.
And the column is just basically the number of, okay, so it is not per action, but it is
not per action, is the total season. Total season.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Maybe one question as well. So the goal was to have a risk averse player evaluation. Can you somehow see how this risk averse metric is now better than, let's say, these? I assume these online measures were not risk averse, right? So is there some way to quantify that why and how the risk averse metric is better than the non-risk averse one?
I think the one benefit of using our uncertainty value is we can first is we can avoid those rare events which may contain the dataset. Maybe the dataset is not recorded correctly. Some action is not correct. We don't know. By use our uncertainty estimation, we can quantify the epistemic uncertainty. And then when we use when we avoid the epistemic uncertainty to evaluate players, then we can actually give a more robust player evaluation. Which I think it reflects to this correlation is we have a higher correlation with these standard measures. And also one other advantage is, I'm not very familiar with soccer actually, but in ice hockey, the players actually have different positions. One position is called defensive players, and one position is called offensive players. So it's very naturally that those players have very different strategies. Like offensive players may take actions like it may want to accept high risk and do some actions, but for defensive players, their actions may be more risk averse. So it's it's a good choice if we can like use different confidence levels to rank those players, such that we can give a more reasonable ranking to the players with different roles.
Okay, but I mean, is there like some quantitative way to measure this, like the benefit of having this risk averse metric over the non-risk averse metric? I mean, I think I get the motivation.
Yeah. I think actually, when we do this work, we also think how we evaluate this method is it's very challenging here actually, because there are no ground truth.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, I think the benefit would be, first we can kind of distinguish risk averse and risk seeking players, because it's not actually existing in the ice hockey game. And the other thing is, if we can kind of avoid epistemic uncertainty, then we may get more robust player evaluation here. Yeah.
And like,
This is what we can what do we have come up with when we design the experiments.
Yeah. People who know me know that I have to ask this question. Did you try some other uncertainty estimation methods? Because I'm not super convinced by these like deterministic methods like SNGP. I think that's the one that you used, or the one that you used is the one from Gal, from Okoti, right?
Yeah, because actually
like the other question is like, does it have to be real time? Because it feels like this is something that doesn't need to be doesn't really need to run in real time.
In the calibration part, we replace the identity estimator by a single Gaussian distribution. Maybe the maybe this one, JDA, I remember. And we don't really try some other.
Because it feels like this is like, if I don't have runtime constraints, I would always expect that an ensemble of neural networks works reasonably well. I mean,
I would say we are not expert for density for answering.
No problem.
Yeah. Okay. I think I still have some slides here. So another experiments we also want to show whether our player evaluation metric is really sensitive to the risk. So here what we do is we compute the player ranking, player scores using different confidence levels, and then compute their correlation with these success measures. I think basically the result makes sense, because when the confidence level is low, means we use a higher level quantile value for player evaluation, so it would be more risk averse. Then reflecting to the correlation, it has a higher correlation with those STEM success measures. And when we gradually increase the confidence level, it becomes more risk averse, then the correlation begins to decrease. This is some experiments to show our player evaluation metric is really can somehow capture the risk sensitivity.
So this is the correlation with the standard measures versus the confidence threshold, right?
Yes, yes.
So that means as you decrease the confidence threshold, you have less correlation, right? I mean, with some, no, actually not. I mean, there are some where there is a little local maximum here, okay.
Yeah, like increased confidence level means we use a lower level quantile.
Mm-hmm.
Then it's more risk averse, then the correlation decrease.
Yeah, but yeah, so with quantile level, you just mean, okay, your cutoff threshold with the epistemic uncertainty is set lower, right? So you take more samples into account.
Oh, no. It's just like when we compute this action impact.
Okay, the core
so
you just use that quantile, okay.
Which quantile value, which level quantile value do we use?
I see. Okay, and that means that often higher quantile values tend to correlate better with the, at least with the official metrics.
Yeah, because more risk averse.
More risk averse. So the
sorry.
Less risk averse.
Yes, less risk averse. Yeah.
So basically those standard metrics. That means that those standard metrics,
the standard metric
very well don't take these rare events into account, right?
Standard metric, they only care about the players who do good actions, like scoring the goal, they take shot. So it's I think standard measures is correlates to risk seeking because they only care good actions. But the fact is we like in all these websites they actually only have these good action statistics. They don't offer some other bad action statistics. So this is.
So you mean like in the analogy of soccer or ice hockey, like it just shows the number of goals, but not the number of shots that you needed to get those goals?
Well, for soccer, the statistics are also very similar. They count how many goals the player take, how many shots, and I think they have different names, but they are all good statistics.
Okay.
Yeah.
So if, for example, we take the goal and the confidence ranked correlation, that would basically mean that if you only take very high confidence goals, or like if you only take a very high confidence, then you have less correlation because of a lot of the goals are kind of with luck.
Yeah, high confidence.
Or what does that mean? How do I read this plot?
Yeah, high confidence means we are more care about the worst outcome of the action. Then it is less correlated with goal because it's worst outcome.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, I think all the statistic here, if we care about the worst outcome, then the correlation decrease. Yeah, that's actually all the material here. Yeah, and thanks for your listening.
Yeah, thanks a lot for the presentation and that it worked so spontaneously. It was nice. Are you still working in this direction, or are you, or do you work on an extension to this, or?
Oh, I think when I was a master student, I do a sports player evaluation, and later on we did some work on player evaluation, but now because we need data set and that time we have collaboration with some companies, so we can have the data set. But now it's if we need to continue this research, we need to buy data set.
So maybe one related question is, so data sets that you use here, so are they public right now?
No. They're not public data set. And the NHL data set is provided by a company in Canada. And the soccer data set is, I don't know where it comes from, and it's provided by a collaborator, our former collaborator.
Okay, makes sense.
So yeah, I mean, this may be a noob comment / question. Yeah, I've read that there are quite some companies popping up that do advanced analytics for soccer, right? And they provide more and more in-depth data, right? And so all this data is not publicly available, right? I mean, you have to buy it from these companies, right?
I think these companies they need to earn money by selling the data sets. Yeah.
Okay. No, I thought and there are no publicly available data sets for research at the moment.
Yeah. Actually, I'm not sure.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cool. Great, thanks. It was a nice talk. It was really interesting.
Yeah, thank you.
And I really like this application of uncertainty estimation.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah. Okay, so I'm going to stop the recording here. I have a super top secret question to Herman.